So, even more information has come out about the whole Vince McMahon situation, and it's not about the allegations and everything, but it actually has to deal with his time running the company, and the fact that now that he's gone, essentially retired, which some people still take with a grain of salt, but if what I and others have reported to be fact, is indeed fact, I don't think anybody has to worry about speculation on whether or not he's gonna come back when the coast is clear, things die down, calm down. But this article came out from Fightful Select, and Alex, just Alex, on his Alex's World Facebook page, and I'm sure his Just Alex Twitter page, posted this. But mostly it's here on his Alex's World Facebook page. Basically, Fightful Select provided details on what it was like working under Vince McMahon in WWE. And again, this is coming out just a couple of days after he retired, due to potentially the story that came out this weekend today, as well as now with Bruce Pritchard being demoted to an executive role. We don't know what it is in creative and on the board. Well, Triple H is now the head of creative and EV of talent relations. This came out, like I said, to, I guess, further confirm what people pretty much kind of talked about, and in interviews, those that would leave the company and swear they'd never come back unless he was gone or stuff like that. Well, Fightful Select provided details on what it was like working under Vince McMahon in WWE. According to the report and what Alex put down here on his page, scripts would often be filtered, quote unquote filtered, to get his approval. He'd forget names and fail to recall feuds/programs and would blow up at the most inconsequential things. Let me reread that. Fightful Select reports that there are details on what it was like working under Vince McMahon in WWE. Scripts would often be quote-unquote filtered to get his approval. He'd forget names and fail to recall feuds/programs and would blow up at the most inconsequential things. In other words, he would blow up at things that didn't need to be blown up at. Further on, it reports, and this is from Fightful Select, when asking those working and near creative what they expected to change the most with Triple H in control, and one specifically said, recall what we have and haven't done repeatedly. And there were so many things that Vince insisted on doing that I'm pretty sure he didn't remember doing over and over again, even when people would tell him, quote. Let me reread that. When asking those working in and near creative what they expected to change the most with Triple H in control, and one specifically said, recall of what we have and haven't done repeatedly. There were so many things that Vince insisted on doing that I'm pretty sure he didn't remember doing over and over again, even when people would tell him. So yeah, basically what this is, to me, is just confirmation of something I talked about in a video a couple years ago. I think during my lunch hour when I was working at Walmart, somebody had done an interview, a former writer, I think a head writer in WWE, and he said that basically Vince would forget about things that happened a week ago, like he was there, like Vince would be right there, he'd approve what's going to happen and all that. And once it's done, thus they can continue on with the story and probably start anew. Vince would want to do it again. And this is something, and again, this is coming from an interview from a head writer that a former head writer did several years ago. Where even they would try to explain to Vince, we already did that. Or they would see others try to explain to Vince, we already did that. So yeah, this coming out from Fightful Select, to me, once I read it off Alex's Facebook page, it's nothing new to me, because I pretty much already knew that, what was going on with Vince McMahon, and everybody just shitting on the fact that there was always repetitiveness in matches week after week after week, this being approved, that being approved. I kind of knew that it had to deal with what that one writer said in that interview, that Vince would forget. And I think, with this coming out, and this is going to, and you think Fightful Select is going to be the only ones to pick up on it? No. Fightful Select, ladies and gentlemen, are not going to be the only ones to pick up on it. They're going to report it, and other outlets are going to report it, but it's going to get picked up on a lot of other media, or by a lot of other news medias. And I think this all has to do with all that head force trauma that he would endure with chair shots to the head. Yeah, I think that's what it is. He would basically allow himself to get hit in the head so hard that I think it affected him later on, to the point that what it sounds like to me, and I thought about this even when I did the video on that interview, that writer did. What it sounds like to me is, not only could it caused a lot of concussions, brain damage, if you will, but it sounds like it could have caused the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, maybe dementia, if not a combination of both. Because when you hear about these kind of things happening, to where someone forgets about something they already did and they still insist in doing it, even though people repeatedly say, no, we did that, or we already been there, we already done that, or you just said that, you just said this, that to me is not only the signs of, okay, people are getting older, the minds are not what they used to be, but it's also the sign of, in my opinion, of someone maybe at the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, if not having the beginning stages of dementia. Now, I understand Vince is a stubborn individual. There's no doubt, very prideful individual. But, if he wanted his company to succeed, even when he was in power, he should have listened to people. And I'll be honest, the people that would tell him, hey, we did this already, what they should have done is get the phones out, get on the computer, show him that it was already done, so that he'd be like, oh, okay, oh, I see what you're saying, okay, so let's change it up a little bit. Maybe if they'd done that, perhaps we wouldn't have so much repetitiveness going on. But we didn't. We didn't have it. And, again, that's on them as well as it's on Vince. But the fact that, again, what it says here, scripts would often be quote-unquote filtered to get his approval. He'd forget names and fail to recall feuds and programs, and would blow up at the most inconsequential things. In other words, things that didn't need to be blown up on, made into a scene. And the fact that he would forget names and fail to recall feuds and programs, again, to me, yes, that is signs that he's getting older and that the mind's not what it used to be. But there are people that are his age, that are my mom's age, that are sharp. My grandma was sharp, even in her final years. She was sharp. She would recall a lot of stuff that my mom wouldn't even recall. My aunts wouldn't even recall. But she would. She was very sharp into her final days, from what I saw and from what I heard. This to me, again, I think it's due to the fact that he took too many headshots to the head and caused a lot of brain damage, and maybe sped up, the process of him having the beginning stages of something like dementia or Alzheimer's, if not both. Which would explain why he would forget names and fail to recall feuds and programs. I mean, I would not be surprised, honestly, and this is just my opinion, I would not be surprised if sometimes he would meet with people in a meeting to set things up for like a pay-per-view like Mania, and he'd probably blurt out and said, so, how are we going to get to Hogan and Andre, or Hogan and Warrior? And people would be looking at him like, what are you talking about? I'm not saying that happened, but if he forgets names and can't recall feuds and programs and all that, and would blow up the most inconsequential things, that as well as he would be, as well as he would want to be insistent on doing things that they've already done and repeatedly. It's just, honestly, I think after he took the one last headshot, heck, after he took that headbutt from Kevin Owens, which he insisted on taking on television, I think that's when he should have just stepped away. He should have just stepped away, handed the reins over to Stephanie, handed the reins over to Triple H, even Shane at the time. He should have done that. He should have done that, so that way we wouldn't be here right now. We wouldn't be reading reports like this right now. But again, when I read this, and even though it goes into more detail than the interviewer did, again, like I said, it didn't really surprise me, since I recall that interview that I did a review on a couple of years ago during my lunch hour at Walmart. I mean, when I read about that interview and that former writer at that time, and this is several years ago, mind you, stating that, that to me was a sign that, this, he's got to go. He's got to go. But again, he's one of those kind of individuals that's very stubborn. And prideful in what he believes in and wants done, and doesn't go or doesn't want to be forced out unless he has to be forced out. And in this case, he had to. But yeah, again, this is not really much of a surprise to me. Getting more details on like the script situation, the forgetting of names, not recalling feuds and programs, and being insistent. Yeah, that's a little bit more details than what the former head writer mentioned. In the interview they did a couple years ago, but it does kind of tie into what that interview, what the interview stated at that time. And again, this is like several years ago. This is like 2017, I think, 2016. I have to look at it again, but yeah, this getting more details about it. Yeah, it is eye-opening, but it's, again, when I read through it like I'm doing now, reading it off to you guys, it doesn't really surprise me, since I kind of had a clue about, something like this happening already through one former head writer's interview that he did. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. How do you feel about this coming out? Even though there have been reports from former head writers, creative staff, and all that throughout the years, do various interviews that pretty much said the same thing prior to this coming out by Fightful Select and Sean Ross Sapp. What are your thoughts? Comment down below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. Super chat, super stickers will be open and would be welcome during the live chat. Super thanks afterwards as well, after the premiere is done. Also, check me out on my Teespring store. Check me out at BW Rose's Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also, check me out at DeviantArt.com. Says BVW1979. Fanfiction.net. Dash. That's not slash dash, but it's dash. Brian.Walmer.1. That's numeral 1 at fanfiction.net. Also, check me out at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't get anywhere else. Also, check me out at Patreon.com for content there as well as shout out. $1, $3 tiers are open for that if you want to help support there, as well as support me over at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2 and at Cash App at BW Roses 98. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are on this. How do you look at this, knowing that, again, to me this is nothing new, since it reminds me of that interview that former head writer did a couple of years ago. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know what your thoughts are. How do you feel about this? Have you ever experienced something like this in your job? Let me know down below and in the comments in the live chat during the premiere. And until then, I am out.